Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking Dr. Samuel Hahnemann's Organon of Medicine to really get at the heart of his foundational philosophy. Specifically, we're zeroing in on what he believed was the single highest duty of a physician, the true mission to restore patient health. If you've ever dug into the roots of alternative medicine, or, just wondered how early medical thinkers viewed healing long before modern lab science took over, you are absolutely going to love this.
We have a fantastic roadmap ahead of us today. We'll be exploring 1. The true mission, 2. Required knowledge, 3. Disease and causes, 4. The vital force, and 5. The path to cure.
Section 1. The True Mission.
Hahnemann lays down his absolute North Star right out of the gate in his very first aphorism. He says, the physician's high and only mission is to restore the sick to health, to cure, as it is termed. I mean, it sounds simple, right? But it's actually incredibly profound. He's saying a doctor's completely selfless, never-ending job is to treat the whole person. We're not just zooming in on isolated tissues or surgically removing a localized issue. The disease process starts way before those physical symptoms even show up. So the goal isn't just erasing a cough or a rash, it's bringing the entire human being back to a harmonious, balanced state of health.
And you really see how radical this was when you look at the contrast. Hahnemann absolutely rejected what he called theoretic medicine. We're talking about the standard practices of his day, things like bloodletting, leeches, cauterization, literally torturing patients based on wild speculations. He threw all that out and defined his highest ideal of cure. A real cure, he argued, has to be rapid, relieving suffering fast. It has to be gentle, meaning it doesn't cause further harm or pain. And it has to be permanent, meaning there is no relapse. It's all about a holistic reversal of illness based on actual, observable natural law.
Section 2. Required knowledge. So, if we want this rapid, gentle, permanent cure, how do we actually pull it off without just guessing? Hahnemann says a physician needs a very specific 4-part toolkit. First up, you have to truly know the disease, which means treating the individual, not just slapping a generic label on them. Second, you have to know exactly what your medicines do, their actual powers. Third, you got to know how to apply them, the exact right potency, the perfect dose, when to repeat it. And fourth, you have to know the obstacles to recovery, because if a patient's diet or environment is making them sick, you absolutely have to remove those roadblocks first.
Section 3. Disease and causes. Speaking of roadblocks, let's dive into what actually makes people sick in the first place. Hahnemann broke causes down into 3 distinct buckets. You've got exciting causes. These are triggers for acute illnesses, like say getting a sudden chill or dealing with intense emotional stress. Then there are fundamental causes. These are the deep, underlying drivers of chronic diseases, which he linked to miasms. But that third one is super important: maintaining causes. These are immediate physical obstructions to a cure. If someone is wearing a bandage that's way too tight, or they're constantly smelling a strong flower that triggers their fainting, the doctor has to remove that maintaining cause first. I mean, if you don't pull out the splinter, the wound is never going to heal.
And to accurately figure all this out, the physician has to be what Hahnemann calls an unprejudiced observer. This is an absolute must. You cannot go in with a preconceived bias or cherry-pick symptoms that fit your favorite diagnosis. You can't decide on a remedy before you've actually examined the patient. You have to rely purely on the verified totality of symptoms, the complete, unfiltered picture of what's going on the outside, which reflects the disease on the inside.
Section 4. The vital force.
So why did those causes make us sick in the first place? What's actually happening inside us? Well, Hahnemann introduces this concept of the vital force. He describes it as a spiritual autocratic dynamis. Basically, it's this invisible energy that animates our material bodies and keeps everything running in perfect harmony. In this view, getting sick isn't just a mechanical breakdown of parts. Disease is quite simply a derangement, an imbalance of this vital force, which then expresses itself outwardly as symptoms. Without this energy, the physical body just shuts down and decays.
To wrap our heads around this invisible dynamic energy, Hahnemann uses some pretty fantastic analogies for his time. Think about the Earth pulling the moon in its orbit, or a magnet snapping up a piece of iron, or the unseen zap of electricity. None of these require a visible mechanical tether to work, right? The power is dynamic. So, Hahnemann's logic is this: if the vital force is dynamic and diseases affect us dynamically, then our medicines also have to cure us through a dynamic, invisible influence.
Which naturally brings us to a huge question, and a major pivot in our explainer.
If disease is an invisible, dynamic energy imbalance, how exactly do physical medicines cure this deranged vital force to achieve that ultimate mission of health?
Section 5. The Path to Cure. To find the answer, Hahnemann looked at how nature handles competing forces. He called this the therapeutic law of nature. It essentially says that a weaker dynamic affection is permanently extinguished by a stronger one that is similar in its manifestations. Think about looking at the sky at dawn. The light of the planet Jupiter is completely erased from your vision the second the sun comes up, because the sun's brightness is a stronger, similar force. Or imagine being in a loud battle. The shrill blast of a flute and a noisy drum can totally drown out the sound of piteous cries. Your system just cannot process two similar dynamic forces at once. It always chooses the stronger one.
So how do we apply this to a patient? It happens chronologically in these exact 4 steps. Step 1. The doctor administers a medicine that produces symptoms very similar to the natural disease, but it's slightly stronger. Step 2. This primary action of the medicine essentially overpowers and extinguishes the weaker natural disease. Step 3. Because the medicinal dose is actually quite small, the vital force easily pushes back and overcomes this temporary medicinal disease. And finally, step 4, the vital principle is totally freed from both diseases and healthy, normal operations resume. And there you have it, the mechanics of a cure.
But wait, how do you find a medicine that perfectly mimics the natural disease? You use a systematic process called drug proving. And here's the kicker, it has to be done purely on healthy human beings. Think about it. If you test a new drug on a patient who is already sick, their natural symptoms are going to completely scramble the drug symptoms. It would be a huge mess. By giving moderate doses purely to healthy, unprejudiced volunteers, the physician gets a crystal clear picture of exactly what disease-producing power that specific substance actually has.
And because this system is so incredibly precise, Hahnemann was hardcore about not using surrogates or substitute medicines. Every single plant, every mineral, every salt produces its own highly unique alteration in the human body. So a doctor can never, ever just swap one remedy for another because they seem vaguely similar. Mixing unknown medicines or blindly substituting them is the complete opposite of that high mission of a precise, individualized cure we talked about earlier.
On top of all that precision, the doctor also has to watch out for idiosyncrasies. This is when a patient has a super peculiar constitution and is morbidly sensitive to things that wouldn't bother anyone else, like someone who literally faints from the smell of roses or gets violently ill from eating a single piece of shellfish. You absolutely have to account for these deeply unique sensitivities. They are a massive part of that totality of symptoms needed for a truly individualized cure.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really chew on. Look at modern medicine today. Are our current practices closer to the harsh, speculative guesswork of the theoretic medicine Hahnemann despised, or have we finally achieved his highest mission of a rapid, gentle, and permanent cure? It really challenges us to look at our modern healthcare landscape through the lens of this singular, timeless mission of restoring the whole patient to health. Thanks so much for exploring the Organon of Medicine with me today. Keep asking those big questions, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.